The Galactic Council's initial attempts to establish a peaceful dialogue with humanity were met with swift and firm rejections. The humans, for reasons beyond the comprehension of the galaxy's most advanced minds, refused to bow to the Council's demands, dismissing their offers of trade, alliances, and peaceful coexistence. With every attempt to engage, Earth's leaders grew increasingly defiant, even mocking the idea of submitting to extraterrestrial rule. The message was clear: Earth would remain free, no matter the cost. The Council, initially baffled by this bold stance, soon recognized the gravity of the situation. They feared humanity's refusal to engage wasn't mere stubbornness, but the beginning of a rebellion that could shake the entire galactic order. The power the humans wielded, though still unrefined compared to the sophisticated alien civilizations, was undeniable. The Council knew that if left unchecked, humanity could grow to challenge their dominance, a pending millennia of peace they had carefully orchestrated throughout the galaxy. An emergency summit was called. The Council deliberated on how to handle Earth's defiance. Military strategies were proposed to force humanity into submission, but the idea of warfare against the species that had so boldly rejected their influence struck fear into the hearts of many. They feared the risk of igniting an all-out galactic war, which would likely destabilize the established order. However, they were left with little choice. Diplomacy had failed. The Council had underestimated the human spirit, their refusal to yield in the face of overwhelming odds, and the sheer force of will that ran through their veins. The Council's decision was swift and brutal: Earth would be invaded. Their massive fleets of warships, each one a testament to their advanced technology, were dispatched, ready to strike at the heart of Earth and subjugate its people. The invasion would be quick, they believed, and with little resistance. Humanity's primitive technology couldn't possibly stand up to their force. They had faced rebellions before, but nothing had ever come close to the audacity of human defiance. They were certain that with overwhelming force, they could crush any hope of resistance within days. But when the first wave of alien forces descended on Earth, the Council quickly learned they had gravely miscalculated. Instead of crumbling, humanity adapted. They had anticipated the attack and had already begun preparing in secret. Their response was swift and organized, defying all predictions. They utilized guerrilla tactics, ambushing alien forces in unexpected places and sabotaging key infrastructures. Despite being outmatched technologically, humanity's resolve and strategic genius turned the tide in their favor. The first skirmish ended in an unexpected victory for humanity, leaving the invading forces reeling. The Galactic Council, once confident in their ability to subdue Earth's inhabitants, now found themselves at a crossroads. The next steps they took were filled with desperation. They sent their most skilled warriors to battle the humans, but the invaders were met with more resistance than they ever anticipated. Humanity's ingenuity and resourcefulness began to shine. The Council's overwhelming military might was slowly eroded by humanity's refusal to back down. The humans didn't just fight for survival, they fought for their independence, their freedom, and their future. With each victory, the tide of war began to shift in their favor. The Galactic Council was no longer the undisputed power in the galaxy. What had started as a single defiant act by humanity had blossomed into a full-fledged rebellion, one that threatened to unravel the centuries-old order of the galaxy. The Galactic Council's leadership began to panic. There were talks of deploying more advanced weapons, even to the point of contemplating genocide to eliminate the threat humanity posed. But no matter how many tactics they employed, humanity's resolve remained unbroken. As Earth's forces grew stronger, more planets within the Council's influence began to reconsider their allegiance. Whispers of humanity's resistance spread across the galaxy, and slowly, the Council began to lose the loyalty of the very races that had once been their strongest supporters. This turn of events shook the foundations of the Galactic Council to its core. The realization that humanity's strength lay not in their technology, but in their unyielding will, terrified them. Their diplomacy, their superior weaponry, and their centuries of experience had all proven ineffective against a force that would not negotiate, would not be cowed, and would not submit. In a desperate bid to regain control, the Council decided to launch a final assault, a full-scale invasion to crush humanity once and for all. They poured every resource they had into this attack, certain that it would break the back of the rebellion. But the humans were ready. Armed with newfound strength and determination, they launched their own counteroffensive, striking with precision and overwhelming the alien invaders. The battle that followed was brutal, but it was clear that the humans were no longer the underdogs. Their resilience and unity had turned the tide in their favor. As the final blows were struck, the Galactic Council, once an unshakable entity, began to crumble. The rebellion, fueled by humanity's rejection of negotiation, had become the spark that ignited a revolution across the galaxy. The once powerful council, broken and in retreat, realized too late that humanity's defiance had forever changed the balance of power. The humans had done what no one else thought possible. They had toppled the Galactic Empire, rejected the Council's demands, and created a new era. The galaxy was never the same again, and the humans, unbowed and unbroken, had proven that no force, no matter how powerful, could crush their spirit. The Galactic Council's fear had been justified. In the end, humanity had triumphed, not by force alone, but by standing firm in their rejection of all attempts at negotiation. Humanity's defiance had rippled across the galaxy, and the Galactic Council's desperation reached new heights. The invasion of Earth had been a monumental failure, and their military forces were stretched thin. What had been expected to be a swift subjugation had instead sparked a rebellion. The humans, driven by an unyielding will and determination, had turned the tide of the war in their favor, even as the Council scrambled to regain control. The Council, rattled by the unexpected resistance, decided to escalate. They began to deploy their most formidable fleets, each carrying an arsenal of advanced weaponry capable of leveling entire cities. But even with their superior firepower, they underestimated the human ability to adapt. The Council had failed to account for humanity's strength of spirit, their sheer resolve to remain free. The humans refused to negotiate, rejected every plea for peace, and instead doubled down on their fight for independence. The first major confrontation saw humanity using unconventional tactics to inflict heavy losses on the Council's forces. Humans, with their ingenuity and resourcefulness, made use of every available resource to fight back. They utilized the terrain to their advantage, setting traps and launching surprise attacks. Even with their advanced technology, the Council's forces found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn. As the conflict dragged on, the Council began to realize that their technological superiority could no longer guarantee their victory. Humanity had proved that they were capable of defeating even the most advanced weapons. They had learned to use the Council's own tactics against them, turning the invaders' strength into their weakness. Each victory fueled the human rebellion, and with every success, the galaxy's perception of humanity began to shift. They were no longer seen as an insignificant species, but as a force to be reckoned with. Amidst the chaos, the Galactic Council decided to take a more aggressive approach. They began to target key human leaders, hoping to break the resolve of the rebellion. But each time they captured or killed one of humanity's leaders, a new leader rose to take their place, each one more determined than the last. The humans showed an unwavering unity, and the Council's attempts to break their spirit only seemed to strengthen it. The rebellion spread beyond Earth. It became a symbol of defiance, not just to the Galactic Council, but to other oppressed species across the galaxy. Rumors of humanity's victories began to spread, and soon, planets once loyal to the Council began to reconsider their allegiance. The power dynamics were shifting. What was once a galaxy ruled by the Galactic Council was now on the brink of collapse, all because humanity had rejected their offers and refused to bow down. The Council, now in full panic mode, began to make reckless decisions. They launched one final, desperate assault, hoping to crush the rebellion once and for all. They poured every available resource into this last invasion, determined to snuff out humanity's growing power. However, they had miscalculated. The human rebellion had grown too strong, too coordinated, and too determined to be defeated. As the final battle unfolded, it became clear that the Galactic Council's reign was coming to an end. Humanity had learned from their past mistakes, perfected their strategies, and rallied their allies. The Council's forces, stretched thin and demoralized, were overwhelmed by the human-led rebellion. The once invincible empire was now crumbling before the unyielding spirit of a species that refused to be controlled. In the aftermath of the battle, the Council was left in ruins. Their empire, built on centuries of domination, was no more. The humans had triumphed, not through sheer force, but through their relentless refusal to submit. Their rejection of negotiation had sparked a revolution that had forever changed the galaxy's balance of power. The Galactic Council's fear had been justified, but they had underestimated humanity's strength. With the fall of the Council, a new era began, one where humanity would no longer be subjugated, and the galaxy would be forever changed by the indomitable will of Earth's inhabitants. The Galactic Council, now fully aware of the threat humanity posed, took the boldest steps yet in an attempt to extinguish the growing rebellion. With Earth's resolve unbroken, the decision was made to initiate an all-out war. An overwhelming force of warships, capable of reducing entire cities to ash, was deployed to crush humanity's spirit once and for all. The Council's strategy was clear: end the rebellion swiftly before other planets followed humanity's example. Yet, despite their technological superiority, the humans proved again that they could not be subdued. Humanity's refusal to negotiate had always been at the heart of their rebellion, and this final act of defiance only reinforced their resolve. The moment the Council's forces entered Earth's atmosphere, the humans unleashed their most devastating weapons, once thought to be only theoretical. Using an advanced network of satellites, humanity had developed technology that could interfere with the Council's advanced communication systems. The warships, now blind and confused, struggled to stay coordinated, falling into chaos as humans launched their strategic strikes. The Council's military might, which had once seemed unbeatable, was now faltering under the human onslaught. Each strike the Council made only added fuel to humanity's fire. Far from cowering in fear, the people of Earth rallied together, their unity stronger than ever. The military, the civilians, and even those who had once hesitated now stood side by side, prepared to fight for their freedom. Earth's resources were not as vast as the Council's, but their spirit was limitless. In the midst of the battle, the Council faced a new reality. Humanity was not only surviving but thriving in the chaos they had created. Their unpredictable tactics and relentless resistance had turned the tide. Where the Council had believed their strength lay in overwhelming firepower, the humans had found power in resilience and innovation. The Council's high-ranking generals began to panic, suggesting the use of their ultimate weapon, a doomsday device that could annihilate entire planets. But even this terrifying option could not guarantee victory, and the fear of what would come next paralyzed the Council. Humanity's ability to outthink their invaders became the key to their success. In the heat of the conflict, a group of human engineers hacked into the Council's war fleet systems and turned their own weapons against them. The weaponized drones, once controlled by the invaders, now acted as humanity's frontline soldiers. This bold move sent shockwaves through the Council. Their own ships, now under human control, began attacking their comrades, tearing apart the forces they had sent to destroy Earth. As the battle waged on, the Galactic Council's most trusted alliances began to fracture. The humans' defiance had sparked a revolution among other planets previously oppressed by the Council's rule. Worlds that had been silently loyal to the Council began to question their allegiance. Some planets, seeing humanity's strength, chose to aid Earth in secret, sending vital supplies and resources to bolster the human rebellion. The Council's unity, once their greatest asset, was crumbling, and the rebels were only growing in strength. The final blow came when humanity's forces, reinforced by their new allies, breached the Galactic Council's most secure command center. The Council, facing imminent defeat, was forced to make one final appeal. They begged for peace, offered terms of negotiation, and promised humanity autonomy in exchange for their surrender. But humanity, resolute in their stance, rejected the offer. The humans knew that negotiation had never been the answer. It was their defiance, their strength, and their refusal to bend that had led them to this point. As the last of the Council's leaders were captured, the empire they had built for eons fell apart. The rebellion that humanity had started on their own soil spread like wildfire across the galaxy. The very foundations of the Galactic Council were erased in a matter of days. Humanity, once seen as a species of little consequence, now stood at the forefront of the galaxy's new era. They had defeated an empire that no one thought could fall, and they had done it by rejecting the notion of submission, choosing to fight for their future instead of being shackled by alien power. With the Galactic Council in ruins, the galaxy was left to rebuild. The rebellion, born from humanity's refusal to compromise, had not only toppled an ancient empire but had reshaped the future of countless worlds. Earth had proven that the true strength of any species was not in their technology, but in their will to resist, to fight, and to never yield. The galaxy would remember humanity not for their mistakes, but for their unwavering spirit, the spirit that had brought down the mightiest empire the galaxy had ever known. The final battle had begun, and the Galactic Council knew it was their last chance to maintain control over the galaxy. Desperation permeated their every move as their once dominant fleet clashed with Earth's forces. The human rebellion, having grown exponentially in strength and unity, had become a formidable adversary. The Council's most seasoned commanders struggled to contain the chaos. Each victory for humanity sent shockwaves through the galaxy, destabilizing the Council's influence on the planets that had once sworn loyalty. Earth's military, though vastly outnumbered, fought with a tenacity that left the Council stunned. Humans had adapted to the alien technology that had initially sought to subjugate them. They had studied their enemies' weaknesses, learned their tactics, and turned them against their invaders. Earth's forces used guerrilla strategies, sabotage, and surprise attacks to chip away at the Council's military might. With each passing day, the once unthinkable thought gained credibility: humanity might actually win. The Galactic Council, realizing they were on the brink of collapse, turned to their most dangerous weapon, one that had never been used in such a desperate moment. The Doomsday Device, capable of destroying entire planets, was their ultimate answer to any threat. But even as they prepared to deploy it, the Council's unity started to crumble. Some factions began to question the ethics of such a weapon. Others were hesitant to annihilate entire planets for fear of alienating their remaining allies. The weapon, once thought to be the ultimate deterrent, now stood as a symbol of the Council's desperation. Humanity, aware of the Council's looming threat, had no intention of backing down. They knew that if they allowed the Council to deploy the weapon, it would mean the end of any chance for freedom, not just for Earth but for countless other oppressed worlds. They moved swiftly, infiltrating the Council's systems and using their newly acquired technology to disable the Doomsday Device. The operation was a success. The weapon, which had once been the most powerful tool in the Council's arsenal, was now rendered useless by humanity's quick thinking and innovation. With their last resort neutralized, the Galactic Council began to fracture. Their remaining forces, scattered and demoralized, were no match for the relentless human advance. The leaders who had once been at the top of the galaxy's power structure were now scrambling to save themselves. No longer able to rely on fear or overwhelming force, they turned to diplomacy in a final, futile attempt to salvage something from the wreckage. But it was too late. The humans had rejected negotiations from the start, and now they had no reason to accept peace on anyone's terms but their own. The rebellion spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Once submissive planets, inspired by humanity's refusal to yield, broke free from the Council's grasp. Many of the Council's allies now saw the tide had turned, and they joined the humans in their struggle for freedom. The fight was no longer just about Earth, it was a galaxy-wide war for liberation. The Galactic Council's once imposing fleet was scattered, its leaders in hiding, and its allies turning against them. In the final days of the Council's reign, their power had eroded completely. The leaders who remained were either in exile or captured. The human rebellion, which had started with a single act of defiance, had grown into a full-scale revolution that toppled the greatest empire the galaxy had ever known. As the last remnants of the Council were dismantled, humanity emerged not as a conquered species but as the new power in the galaxy. The galaxy, now in the hands of those who had rejected negotiation and embraced resistance, entered a new era. Earth, once a lone planet under threat of destruction, now stood as a beacon of hope for those who had suffered under the oppressive rule of the Galactic Council. The humans had shown the galaxy that strength did not lie in technological superiority, but in the indomitable will to fight for freedom. The Galactic Council had trembled in fear as humanity rejected every attempt at negotiation. In the end, it was that very refusal that led to their downfall and the rise of a new galactic order.